All right, guys, we got an interesting one today. If you've been watching the videos, you know old boy was struggling to keep oil temps down with the new motor build. So today, we're gonna be solving that with ChatGPT. Two major players kind of in this oil cooling game, at least for the Corvette community. Now, you have a lot of other onesies and twosies, but for the most part, high dollar, best overall kit is gonna be the G-Speed oil cooler kit, which is the fog light replacement setup. And then you have a very reputable brand, Improved Racing, which I bought a lot of my kit components from, that works on a large, massive replacement of your stock one, your stock oil cooler for Z06s. And it's basically a side tanked cooler setup, a bit more affordable, but comes with some caveats where it can increase coolant temp. So had to make the decision between those two. Do I spend the $3 grand and change for the G-Speed kit? Do I spend $1,000 for the Improved Racing kit but be limited? Or option C, which is the option we took, which is build our own G-Speed kit. The G-Speed kit is what I am replicating mine off of. Now, there's no direct online manual to download, and I'm not trying to be extremely dickish and cutting their business by mocking it to their exact, but they are the best known for what they do. So naturally, without reinventing the wheel, we're running a very similar setup. Now, where does the cost come into play, right? We're talking about G-Speed kit, dual oil cooler kit. It's gonna be running you about 3,000 bucks for a C6 Z06. Don't know about the other cars. My kit, all in as of right now, is putting me just south of $1,300. That includes two Setrab oil coolers, the Improved Racing oil cooler block and thermostat, basically the AAN lines, all the AAN fittings, and of course the ABS plastic and a couple other things to create what we need to mimic a G-Speed cooler kit. So to mimic or come close to what a G-Speed setup comes up to, there's not a lot of online data. There's a few people that kind of go into the process, but how do you create this, and why is that price point $3,000 versus my $1,200? I don't want to discredit the G-Speed kit by saying you can do this for much less, which theoretically, yes, but there is a lot of components involved in this that are going to require research and additional time. It's a pretty involved setup. It takes about 8 hours according to G-Speed to do their kit. And then if you factor in the components that you're missing when you try to build your own kit, that time is going to be increased, which is going to be measuring, adapting brackets, creating your own ducting. That's going to really add time to the process. So that's where going with a kit like G-Speed, you're going to be able to go with the ease that you have a full-blown out instruction manual and everything is cut and designed to fit your car as is. Whereas a kit like mine, I'm using a lot of, aftermarket stuff to kind of piece it together and make it work. But again, the idea of my build personally is more of a budget build without sacrificing quality components, and at the same time using the YouTube to kind of educate or give, as this car becomes more affordable and the younger market kind of comes into this car, how they can build a track build and not always pay the Corvette tax that kind of comes with it. So G-Speed runs Setrab coolers just like we're running here. Now, this is where we use ChatGPT to kind of help us in this process, which was try to determine what size coolers are going to fit in this area, right? What type of bracketing, what sort of ducting to create the design, and what sort of sealing we're going to need when the bumper's back in place. This is a Setrab Series 6 19-row cooler. Now, I'll tell you right now, from a couple mock-ups that I've done, you can see they're already bracketed, but from the couple brackets and adjustments I've done, you can easily fit a 25-row cooler setup. Now, the beauty of this is that it's a pretty straightforward setup. I can always upgrade to a 25-row if I feel that my cooling is not sufficient. There is one on this side, and there's also another cooler on the opposite side. So we should have plenty in comparison to our factory one there. Also, removing the factory one away from the front of the radiator, we should actually get slightly better engine cooling So there's a plus for going with this setup. But again, you can more than likely, and ChatGPT did notify me of that, you can more than likely fit in a 25 row cooler here if you do need additional cooling. Now I am running the 19 row on here. Bought these off of Improved Racing when I bought the oil block in thermostat, and I also bought, you know, the adapters that go for here, which converts this to an AN10 fitting. And then of course, I actually bought the AN lines and all of their elbows and kit from Evo Energy on Amazon. I've used a couple of their products in other places on the car, and they seem to be working out pretty well. Paid for 20 foot of hose, I think it was like $100. So definitely the juice was worth the squeeze there. The brackets that you see on this side and this side here, these are just Home Depot metal brackets that have been adjusted to fit. Now I will say the G-Speed kit brackets are much nicer than these, a bit more secure. The mount is on there, but this top mount that Setrab sells is not the strongest, so there is a little bit of flex. I may reinforce the bottom as we get through this video. But as of right now, they're both mocked up. The bumper's already been mocked one time and it fits nice and easy. We do have to cut and design the ducting to make sure that the air flows directly through the cooler. When air flows, it's gonna look for the easiest path to continue its flow. So if you don't have any ducting, once the air comes through the fog light, it's basically going to travel anywhere minus this. You're gonna get some airflow through the cooler, but you're not nearly gonna get as much unless you duct it and actually force the air to flow through the cooler, which is the idea of the product. So we do have to duct them. I bought basically ABS plastic in large sheets, which we have to cut, and we'll cut to some of the ChatGPT designs for that as well. And then of course, the bigger thing is how to route these lines. We need to make sure that we route these two coolers correctly and back to the thermostat so we have proper oil flow. Essentially the brackets that we need to build in front of this to house essentially the ducting case. We have how we're going to route the oil lines for cooling, because that's going to be a big component, and obviously we have some of the bracketing information, stuff like that. It was pretty detailed on the kind of information it gave, the versus doing a balanced setup versus a series setup, having, you know, what line size to fit, how much line approximately we're going to use, all that stuff. I'll see if I can download that and attach it to my YouTube description. Both coolers are pretty much mocked into position and committed in the height that they're at. Where I might extend it is actually adding a bracket beneath it, because there is motion in the factory bracketing, so I might bracket from the bottom just to kind of keep it firm in place, especially when you're on track and there's a lot of vibration happening. But they're essentially being held up with Home Depot bracketing. Again, the G-Speed kit does have a far more advanced bracketing system, but essentially working off the same format, drilling into the top fiberglass right under your headlight, and then using the frame here for additional bracketing. I did drill 2 bolts, so this bolt hole was already here from factory. I did drill an additional one to prevent any motion of that bracket there on both sides. The height is absolutely perfect for what I want to do. Again, if you're running a 25 row, you might have to run a little bit different. I will link these brackets as well in the description from Home Depot, so you can go ahead and pick those up. We need to move on to the messy part, which is I need to drain the oil out of this thing from every crevice that it has. It was due for an oil change anyways, so this is perfect timing for it. We're going to drain both drain plugs because this is a Z06. We will pop off the dry sump lines, which is something I always do in standard practice when draining the oil in this car. And we need to take off the oil cooler. The oil cooler and the thermostat, well, not the thermostat, but the oil cooler block on the side of the engine block, which is found on the driver's side. So we can replace it with the improved racing one. And let it drain for some time to kind of clean up the system and stuff like that. And obviously the front oil cooler here is going to have some oil in it as well. We got to clear all that out, so let's get messy. We get all nice and messy. Figured I'd show you guys what I'm running oil-wise. So we're going to be switching up to AMSOIL's Dominator Series Racing Oil 15W50. I was running on the last track session their 10W40, their Z-Rod line. And before the engine rebuild, I was running Mobil 1 15W50 and Motul 5W40. Once the oil pressure became a concern, I was pretty much full-time 15W50 Mobil 1. And then after the rebuild, I figured, let me try a 40 weight back in the car. My oil pressures are astronomically higher than what they used to be. Now, with that being said, 15W50 and me working towards oil cooling are kind of almost a double negative, right? Because the 15W50 naturally is going to create a bit more heat, but it is going to be a bit more resistant to the heat because when it does break down, it's going to break down at a slower rate than something like a 40 weight. So for example, when I hit 275 degrees on oil temp on the track, my oil pressures were starting to get in the 35 to 40 range, which is very low for what my new motor has shown. And that's essentially because I've broken that oil down to the point where it was probably more of like a 20 weight. The 50 weight is going to provide a bit more protection there because it has a longer journey to kind of really just fall apart. So it's going to provide a bit more lubrication, maybe hurt a little bit on the power and stuff, but this bald eagle doesn't feel a thing. So this is what we're going to be running. This car really doesn't see much road use, and I live in South Florida, so even then the 50 weight is not necessarily a major concern, but it will be pretty much full time on a 50 weight unless I know the car is going to be sitting away from track use for a while. When we get down there and we start to take apart the oil block that connects to the oil coolers, you're going to replace it with this, which is Improved Racing's, I don't know why it's refusing to focus, Improved Racing's oil thermostat. When you purchase this boy, you're going to have 3 options. You're going to have you're going to have 4 options. You're going to run a no thermostat racing application option. Highly don't recommend that unless this car is literally only going to do that. You have a lot of people that are anti-thermostats, and you have a community that's like, hey, just put a different degree thermostat in there. I am a run a thermostat kind of guy, but ironically, my truck's transmission does not have a thermostat in it. But I feel that impacts, obviously in South Florida, it's not as concerning, but for you other guys out there, it really makes it hard for the motor to get up to temp or the transmission or whatever it is that you're cooling without a thermostat. And remember, the thermostat's focus is wait till it gets to that, let it heat up, and then expand and open. So you have a 180 degree, you have a 200, and you have a 212. I went with the 200 range because I feel like at 180, it's going to keep, for the few times that I am on road use, it's going to keep that oil a bit too cool. I think 200 is that sweet spot. Right now, the car gets like 190, 193 anyways out on the streets. So, not a big deal, and be able to kind of keep the same functionality it has now. And then obviously at the track, once it hits 200, pop those bad boys open and let's cool. So I'm going with the 200. If you go with a different thermostat and you're like, you know what, this is not working out for either my road driving or my track driving, you can always call Improve Racing and have a different thermostat shipped to you and then swap it out. But enough avoiding getting dirty. Let's get into this car and start pulling this thing apart. We've got the return line routed. We're essentially using the original oil cooler's passage. Fix this damn hat. We're using the oil cooler's original passage through the front. We're going to tie wrap it to the radiator support. I'll show that in a second. And then we are cutting right around the radiator support back through where the original cooler lines were. Obviously, they're exposed to a lot of heat there because they're right near the headers. And I don't know about you guys with your fire-breathing LS7s, but I tend to cook up spark plug wires. Last thing I want to do is cook oil. So we got some additional heat sleeving here. Now, the PTFE lines are usually pretty heat resistant, but this just adds an additional layer of protection, also helps maintain the temperature. I did put a little bit of oil in that cooler. I have to do it here on this one as well. The lines are still going to have, the system's still going to have a little bit of air, so it's going to be a little bit of a process to kind of let everything work. Keep in mind, I have a 200-degree thermostat, so when I start this car, they're not necessarily going to be completely open, so the cooler's not going to be flowing immediately, so we'll keep a close eye on it. I've already cut this line and measured for the return. Just got to slide this on before I actually put the 90-degree fitting that will bracket onto the cooler thermostat over on the side here. So that's what I'm going to work on now, and then I'm going to finish up this last line here. And then we should be able to begin the just kind of putting everything back in, putting the oil back in the motor, and then get ready to test it. All right, so we're at the point of cranking the motor over. We're gonna put the clutch in, gas pedal in, so that we can just turn it without starting the motor. Clutch pedal's in. Stand as far back because I'm using my old shotgun mic here. My mics are dead right now. We went out for a quick test drive on the car, and unfortunately we might still have a leak. Now, I don't know how much of the original leaks I recorded, but the one pitfall of doing this yourself is the lines are not pressure tested like the ones you're going to receive from like G-Speed and stuff like that. So I made a couple little small errors when I did the lines, and I had very small leaks up at the front coolers. Those are all been addressed. They're all tight and seem to be working just fine. Now it's taking forever for the oil temp to kind of get up there. I think I got it up to like 130 before I kind of went up the block, idled it, and just turned it around just to see if, as the car moves, lines move around a little bit, they jiggle, does anything shake itself and start to leak. I smelled a little bit coming from the oil cooler or thermostat block on the side of the block, so got the car back up on quick jacks, going to basically assess to see if it's leaking. I'm going to wipe it down, start the car back up, and with the quick jacks I can safely get under it and just kind of monitor it to kind of see if I see an active drip, which is my concern. And if it's not, it's just, obviously I made a mess with how many times I've taken some of those components apart. There's going to be some oil that wasn't cleaned off. Then I'm not too concerned, and we can go into just tidying it up, which is basically, tie wrapping the lines, make sure the lines are not rubbing into anything, they're not moving around, and then finally put the bumper back on. Now, I posted an Instagram story last night of the car idling, and I called this the ChatGPT oil cooler install, and many people, more than I expected, were kind of DMing me asking about if I'm running fans or if I'm ducting or if I'm doing these things. For the sake of science, I was going to initially duct it right away and set it up. I want to document the befores and afters, right? I know what my oil temps were on the last track day when it was the stock setup. We're going to schedule a track session with them not ducted, which, for those that don't know, when you're not ducted, sure, in theory you think, oh wow, the air just blows straight through. No, the air is going to take the path of least resistance, so that means it's going to do everything to avoid the cooler. So the coolers are up by the fog lights. They're still going to get some air, but they're going to get less air if they're not ducted. So we're going to see what the temps go down to there, and then of course, for the sake of science, I'll take the bumper back off, I'll duct it, go to that, and then worst case scenario, if we do have to go fans, which I highly doubt, we will look into a fan setup for this build right now. So I'm going to get into the car, start it back up, see what's going on, see if we can finally put this little leak to bed, and then move on to phase 2. This one's a bit of a longer video, but it has taken me quite some time to kind of put this car back together, and I've just been piecing the video as I go, and then I realized, hey, I made a 30-minute video. Hopefully you'll watch this long, and hopefully I added enough B-roll or maybe some music or something just to kind of keep it going for you, just to kind of round this out, because I know it's been bits and pieces. I'm working on the car, I take off, I do some more, just to recap, 2 Setrab 19-row Series 6 coolers in the front, 10 AN lines running to an improved racing 200-degree thermostat oil cooler block in the factory oil cooler location. The lines, we have the main line that connects from cooler, let's call it cooler A and cooler B. The line runs right through the bumper beam, right through the middle there, and to a 90-degree elbow to each one. Then you have the return line that comes from the furthest cooler on the passenger side that routes all the way to the driver's side oil cooler. That line drops right beneath and runs right through where the factory oil cooler, there's the shrouding for the factory oil cooler and radiator. The line runs right through there where the factory oil cooler sits, connects to the other side, and then pivots and corners right above the steering rack into the oil cooler passage, essentially where the factory oil cooler lines were routed. The last cooler on that side, the driver's side in, basically follows a very similar short route, just right off of that one. I believe is running a 90-degree elbow there, right towards that same spot. I took the same bend to follow the same factory oil cooler routing. Obviously, they're a lot thicker, and I have heat sleeving on top of it, so it gets a little bit of a pain to put them through, but not too hard to do that. Drawbacks from going with a build-it-yourself kit versus the G-Speed kit. When it comes to building it yourself, unless you have a professional making those lines for you, you're going to run into situations, you might run into situations like me where majority of my lines and the fitting points were leaking. And that's because I was measuring, I was cutting, and I was putting the fittings on. And with little to no experience, a couple of them were a little loose. Very easy adjustments, but frustrating when you want to get the car running and now you're tracking down leaks in certain areas. I think that was the biggest drawback. Now the benefits, the upside is, I obviously saved close to $1,800, maybe $2,000. $2,000 is probably pushing it because I think I was around $1,300 to build my kit, and still all quality components. But still, it was a substantial savings for me because again, this is more of a I don't want to call it a budget build, but finding the most efficient ways to put quality components on this car, so I do a lot of the work myself. That way I can invest the rest of the money back into racing the car. With that being said, moving forward, I really hope to not be making any more garage videos and just be track racing, and maybe ins and outs of other things, obviously my truck and a couple other things, but there's no more money being thrown at this car to modify it. I'm gonna run it as it is. That was the last change I'm making. Aside from I have my 6-point harness I have to install, there's nothing else going to be done in this car. Everything in 2026 will be focused on just driving. The only modification will be to me and improving my ability to drive this car effectively. Okay. ChatGPT was pretty darn accurate in everything I asked it. It gave me which coolers to run, and if I wanted to, what cooler size to run. It gave me how much oil to add now to the new coolers in the system. It gave me exactly, I mean, I probably have 1 foot to 2 foot of extra line that I bought. I bought over 100 feet. It gave me exactly which line, how much to buy of it, the fittings. It gave me the designs for the ducting. Again, that it's not ducted currently because I did get a lot of people when I put like a little ChatGPT Instagram story. I got a lot of people asking, hey, are you running fans? Did you duct it? Did you do this? Did you do that? And it was a little bit more interest than I usually get. So I was like, okay, for the sake of science, I'm gonna set up a track session without the ducts. We know for a fact it's gonna improve it, because now once the air flows into the fog light, it can kind of move everywhere and avoid the cooler. So the coolers are not working to full potential, but I want to see what it does then and then document what it does after that. So we'll run one session. I'm going to try to run them both early in the year so that we have very similar temperatures. Florida's dealing with really good weather right now. By March, we're already starting to see some climbs in that weather. So we're going to try to book 2 sessions so that we can do that. And yeah, outside of that, back to that drawback, the leaks was really the only thing. It's not leaking anymore. We actually today, with my good buddy Phelps Garage and his idea, we actually blocked off the 2 front fog lights with tape. We masked them both to restrict the airflow to the coolers. Drove it up and down safely, just kind of keeping the revs high in a lower gear to try to get that oil temp up to 230, 235, to try to thin the oil out. We are running now a 50 weight in this oil, again, like we were when the motor had issues. So to kind of thin that oil out, to kind of see if we did have any leaks,
Because the last thing we want is to go out on the racetrack, it starts to leak, it leaks in front of my tires, I potentially lose control of the vehicle, and I can put myself at risk, and even worse, I could put someone else at risk. So we wanted to make sure that it was nice and safe. Everything seems to be okay right now. The next step is testing it on the racetrack. If I don't see you guys or talk to you guys before the new year, have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.